voice in our ears, but the more we race the sound of its tone. We'll thunder and feast on any man, any beast, doesn't matter, we'll snack on them all. The stragglers we didn't consume are dropped in our sacrifice too. They scream and they run, but that's part of the fun, as the ogres are coming to get ya!
Greetings, ladies and laddies, and welcome back to the realms of this cursed city. Today's miniature is a bit of a surprise, as we're not going to paint the graceful and delicate wood elf Culathis, but will encounter her exact counterpart in form of the crude ogre Brutogg Corpseeater. The reason for that is that I'm still waiting for the answer to an important business inquiry that would massively enhance the quality of her video, so I just changed the schedule. That aside, I've actually been really looking forward to painting him, as his rough and oversized nature would be a very welcome change to all of the fine casting Culathis will present to us. So without further delay, let's get going. Starting off with the metallic parts, we take a big brush with some dark silver and quickly take care of his chainmail, and basically all of the other metallic parts in general. Even though not all of these parts will stay silver, it is still a good choice to give them a metallic base color now. We don't pick out any of the details, like the belt buckles for example, as those would probably just get covered up with other paints again later down the track. After all of the major metallic parts are painted, we take a pale brown and a small brush to paint the leather gambizon under his plate and chainmail. It's not really possible to avoid the plates on his skirt completely, though you should definitely try to keep the paint in between the cracks as best as you can. Now we switch to a very rich brown and continue on his leather parts, starting off with his boots. Brutogg is wearing quite a bit of leather, so just as with Yeltsin a few episodes back, we want to differentiate between them as much as possible. That being said, you could of course do just one color if you like that better, or if you just don't have that much time. Being done with all of the leather, we come to another important part of this mini, his skin. Here we start with a dark terracotta, which we want to have watered down quite a bit to make use of our zenithal highlight. We also touch up the carafe on his belt with this. Before we go any further in this regard, let's just quickly address his paraphernalia in general. For the two swords, or better for their sheaths, we can take a few fun colors, for example our lovely jade green or bordeaux red. For the stripes holding them together, I went with a mustard yellow, and even though this looks very bright now, it'll be knocked down into oblivion later on. Coming to his trousers, I thought a pale light blue would suit him well. Okay, now it's time for some more true metallic metal action, as we take an orange brass and paint the cool face on his pauldron, the plates of his helmet, as well as his knee protection. For the finer ornaments on his swords and the buckles of his belt, I opted for a true metallic gold. Now it's time for the fur framing his outfit, for which we want to take a light khaki paint. While doing that, I also changed my mind about his boots, as the brown is kind of a bit too bright to me. Instead, I took a blue tinted dark grey and just quickly painted them over. You can of course do whatever you prefer, but I like this look better. After all of this, we finally return back to his skin, taking a light terracotta to pick out all of his individual muscles. Here it is really important to leave the darker skin in the recesses, and only paint from an angle where the light actually shines on the mini. For example, we don't want to paint the underside of his arms. Although most of his muscles are big and easily accessible, you might want to consider switching to a finer brush when you come to his throat, and even more so his facial features. Now it's only the details that are left, for example some smaller trinkets all over him, and his teeth, for which you should definitely not take any shade of white. The bottle on his necklace has a cross on it, so I'm guessing it's holy water? Which makes perfect sense against vampires, don't get me wrong. But what does this imply about Christianity in the Warhammer world? Maybe we shouldn't overthink this. And anyway, with these last bits, all of the base colors are now fully applied, and so far we're off to a great start. Yet, for our dark and gruesome setting, he does look a bit too bright, and also quite flat despite his bulky body. So get yourself a big brush and a generous amount of black wash. Here we don't have to look out for anything in particular, and can just sweep the brush to our heart's content. Just try to be quick with it on the large and smooth areas to avoid tide marks from showing up. After all of Brutogg is sufficiently coated and needs time to dry, we can turn our attention to his base. Here we start by laying the foundation with Citadel's texture paint Sterling Mud. Then we dab some mustard yellow in random spots under the ground for more texture, and finish it up by dry brushing the whole thing with some light beige. Now we just need to paint the cobblestones in a color matching the Cursed City map cards, pick out the skull on his base with khaki, and last but not least, paint the trims in a smooth, pitch black. And just like that, Brutogg Corpseeater is fully painted up to a nice game and battle-ready standard, able to bash some skelliets in and claim the flesh of the wolf, the delicacy he so greatly desires. Looking as he does now, we could definitely call it a day on him at this point, but I think that there's still quite a bit of unscripted potential left in him. So I would like to use the next few minutes to show you guys a few optional extra steps, showcasing how you can even further elevate this already awesome looking mini. First and foremost, we want to lighten him up a bit again, starting with his skin. Although I really like the more grimdark approach to my models, I have found that this kind of style is quite hard to entertain on the truly dark streets of Wolfenkarn. Taking the same color from earlier, we basically paint the upper part of his muscles again, leaving a bit of the previous color still showing. After that we take an even lighter tone of that color and repeat this process, focusing on the most upward facing parts and details that catch the most light, especially those of his facial features. Having the skin done, we turn to all of the metallic parts. Here we want to reinforce the reflections on the material, although I want to advise you to be careful when doing this and not pick a paint too shiny compared to your undercoat, as I just did on his skirt. To play it safe, I use the same silver as we used for the base coat, as the wash has it dulled down so much. Coming to his chainmail, we can just give it a light dry brush and let the brush do all the work for us. When highlighting the blade on his glove, we want to pull the paint in small streaks from the cutting edge, so that it looks crude and more fitting to its wielder. On the brass, we also start with the same paint as before, and just give it a light polish. Then we switch to a light silver paint again and paint a few dots of it very watered down onto the helmet, but use the pure silver to pick out the highlights on the pauldron. Now we come to the fur and take some light khaki with a fine brush, and catch all of the individual strands of hair, which might look complicated and tedious, but is really not as bad as you might think. Then we turn to the leather with a rich brown, and highlight the back and pouches, as well as the broad belt across his back. I didn't really bother highlighting the rest of the leather, as, in all honesty, it doesn't need any more highlights, so we just plant some bushes onto the base for a little more color and interest, before calling this paint job officially done. Brutogg Corpseeater, a man-eater with a taste for the undead, is finally done, and oh boy am I happy with his look. I think my favorite parts are actually the muscles, as they were hella fun to paint and also lighten up the model by a great deal, so that he really stands out on the table. If you are following me along in this series with your own miniatures at home, you will have 6 out of 8 heroes of the Cursed City finished, as well as the other 52 antagonists the game has to offer. As always, I'll have a full painting guide listing the exact paints that I used for this paint job down in the description of the video, And should you have any questions, maybe a couple of suggestions, be my guest and share your thoughts in the comment section. Now, as the series is slowly but surely coming to an end, with only 2 more heroes left to paint, we gotta start thinking about what comes next. Or better, you need to decide on what comes next. As I already did the thinking and would like to propose 2 options as the next big project for this channel. Option 1, diving even more into the Age of Sigmar by painting up some Lumineth. As a former High Elf player, I am really excited about these guys and would love to paint them in a unique and interesting color scheme. But also provide easy to follow speed painting advice, just as I already do with our Cursed City series. Option 2, going the exact opposite direction and exploring the grim darkness of the far future with some Necrons. Now, I know, we all know the dull silver and green color scheme by Games Workshop, but I would like to really put an exciting twist to them, combine old with new, and transform them with a lot of cool kit bashing. I can promise you, whatever you pick, it's gonna be incredibly exciting, and I'm really hyped up for going either way. So please feel free to tell me what you would like best in the comment section under any of my videos. You can vote for either or both, and have time till January 2022. In the next video of our speed painting series, we're hopefully gonna paint Colathis the Exile. This time for real, as I really do have her all lined up and ready. Whatever it's gonna be though, a lot of cool shenanigans are planned for the months to come, and if you would like to know what I'm talking about, feel free to hit the subscribe button. As I am really looking forward to seeing you again in my next video. Until then, take care.